Now I'm going to explain Capricorn. And right off the bat, people are probably going to ask, what do you mean, Capricorn? Are you going to be talking about a Capricorn ascendant, or a Capricorn sun, or a Capricorn moon, or what? Well, folks, I'm just talking about Capricorn. It's going to be relevant to you if, for whatever reason, you have Capricorn active in your horoscope. The three most typical ways that we would consider a sign to be active is if the ascendant or the moon or the sun occupies the sign. Then, of course, you're going to want to know the next question. What's the difference? Is there a difference between a Capricorn rising? Is there a difference between a Capricorn sun and a difference between a Capricorn moon? What about if Capricorn is in my Navamsha? It's still just Capricorn. Just bear in mind why it's being activated. If it's being activated by the sun, then that's Capricorn pertaining to solar things. It's being activated by in your D9, your Navamsha, then it's Capricorn pertaining to what the Navamsha symbolizes. So just really briefly, the ascendant is like the main overall picture of everything about you. The sun is the picture of how your self-confidence works and how it drives your decision making. And the moon is about how your opinions work and how it drives your desires and emotions. And of course, any one of these Capricorns is going to be modified by the rest of the things in the chart. Maybe you have a Capricorn moon with Saturn, or maybe you have a Capricorn moon with Venus. Those are all going to be different permutations, but what we're going to talk about here is the baseline to familiarize yourself with so that you can make the adjustments to the particular circumstances. Okay, so what is Capricorn all about? It's about two things: tenacity and realism. So all we have to do is elaborate on those two themes, tenacity and realism, and then we can really understand how Capricorn works. So to elaborate on tenacity, Capricorn indicates endurance, longevity, and tolerance. Now I'll explain each one of those in more detail in a second, but at this point, let me just mention that you can get basically a positive or a negative version of any traits. So let's also mention the negative permutations of these same three traits. Instead of endurance, you might just be really stubborn. And instead of longevity, you might just be relentless and unyielding. Or instead of being tolerant, you might be really, really callous. As for the realism side, it unfolds into Capricorn representing things like objectivity, utilitarianism, and analytical nature. Then again, the negative sides of these things, instead of being objective, you might just be inflexible. Instead of being utilitarian, you might actually be quite debased. Instead of being analytical, you might be outright pessimistic. So we got these 6 themes of Capricorn derived from these 2 root themes, and each of the 6 themes has a positive and a negative polarity. Each sign is kind of like a musical instrument. So take, for example, a guitar. A guitar sounds like a guitar no matter what, but it sounds quite different depending on how you play it. Similarly with rising signs, each sign has basic symbolism, but leaves us with the question of how this symbolism will be utilized by this particular chart for this particular person. The key to sorting out how the symbolism would be utilized is to understand the dignity of the sign. At the end of this video, I'll explain how you figure out that dignity. For now, I want to just mention that I just released a new report which will sort out all the dignity for you and give you an exact balance for your rising sign of how much of the positive traits are versus how much of the negative traits. So I said that because Capricorn is tenacious, it therefore represents endurance. And I have this picture here of a bull pulling a plow. Capricorn is an earth sign, so it's pretty appropriate. And the Capricorn actually literally means horns on your head or a hard head. Because this is the nature of Capricorn, is to act like a bulldozer. It bulldozes through obstacles. It bulldozes through problems. And that's what we mean by this endurance. It doesn't get stopped because it continues to apply force. Think of pushing up against the wall. You push up against the wall a little bit, and then you give up. Capricorn, however, keeps pushing the wall until the wall falls. For example, it means like you have a task to do, whatever the task may be. You keep doing it, even when you hit the snags. You get jobs done because of being tenacious. So that is one of the really positive traits of Capricorn that shows up the more Capricorn is positive in your chart. The negative permutation of endurance, however, is also kind of representable by a bull. Very stubborn. You won't stop doing what you're doing, even when everybody is asking you and all the circumstances are requiring you to stop. So Capricorn has these two negative potential traits, one of which is just like to be stubborn in the sense of unyielding. And the second one is like inflexibility in the sense of being unwilling to compromise, unwilling to negotiate, unwilling to adjust, unwilling to give any space to anything else except what you are doing and the way you are doing it. So you see, really, these are just a negative and a positive way of looking at the same thing, tenacity and endurance. So because Capricorn is tenacious, it also indicates great longevity. And by longevity, we mean things last a long time, and especially we're talking about health and vitality. So people with a very active, positive Capricorn, they retain their strength, their vitality, and their energy far into old age. And not only into old age, but into the lifespan of any kind of project that they have. They maintain their initial energy levels almost entirely to the end of the project. Like we said, it's very difficult to stop a Capricorn from doing what they want to do. Therefore, even disease and illness and old age has a hard time stopping Capricorn. Now, if we look at that in a negative light, that longevity and that inability to be stopped translates into just too much force, like a very uncompassionate, merciless application of force. So one of the key negative traits of Capricorn is like merciless relentlessness and a lack of delicate tact. So it's kind of like this metal shredder that's going to shred anything that gets put into it, even very delicate things. The third thing about the Capricorn's tenacity is a great deal of tolerance. So let me explain exactly what I mean by tolerance, because it's not like religious tolerance or ideological tolerance. It's literally like pain tolerance. Capricorn, because Capricorn means hard-headed, right? It's like wearing a helmet. To be a Capricorn is like to walk around with a helmet on. You can get hit in the head when you're wearing a helmet and it doesn't hurt as bad. So Capricorn has that asset to it. It doesn't take damage. It has high resistance to damage. Therefore, people with positive Capricorn can deal with very stressful situations. But the negative version of this tolerance is very interesting. I'm going to describe it as callousness. What happens is, since I don't feel pain, I'm not very sensitive to the pain thresholds of other people. My pain threshold as a Capricorn is very high. Your pain threshold as a Gemini or something might be very low. But everybody tends to see the world through their own eyes. So I am not even aware that you're in pain yet until you're very deeply in pain. So what that actually, the sum and substance of that, or what that actually translates into, is I seem very callous. The Capricorn person seems callous. And the way this all works together with the other things like being unyielding and relentless is that Capricorn can therefore be extremely brutal. Now, let's move on to the next fork of what Capricorn is all about, which is realism. The first practical offshoot of Capricorn's realism is that it has great objectivity. So Capricorn can be a very neutral and objective judge of people and circumstances and the value of things. It really doesn't care about promises, packaging. It actually looks at how something truly functions. So if you want a real unbiased opinion, you can ask a Capricorn. Of course, try to find somebody that's a high-functioning Capricorn, like a positive Capricorn. Because the negative version of objectivity is inflexibility. We only see the things our way. See, objectivity means you're not swayed by the other ways of seeing things or the other possible angles on things. You just see it as it is. But if that is negative, then it means you only see things the way you see them and you don't see them from many points of view. Therefore, you're not very flexible or amenable to the way other people like to do things, the way other people like to see things. Another positive implication of realism is utility or utilitarianism. Capricorn is extremely utilitarian. What I mean by this is Capricorn can make something out of anything. Positive Capricorn. If you give Capricorn a bunch of old garbage, it will make an art sculpture out of it. Or it'll build a house out of it. It will find something useful in anything. And this is why Capricorn is extremely good at rising out of poverty or starting from scratch with things. Because it doesn't need a lot of initial investment and a lot of initial resources, because Capricorn really knows how to use the resources that are around already. The flip side of this, or the negative side of this utilitarianism, is debasity. How do you get from utilitarian to debasity? Utilitarian means everything is good. And that's what debasity also means. I'll do anything. Nothing is taboo. Nothing is off limits. Finally, the third ramification of Capricorn's realism is to be highly analytical. What analytical means is it takes an issue, breaks it down, and figures out what's truly going on. This is Capricorn's forte. It's an excellent logician. Cuts through all the garbage and all the fluff, and it just sees things as they really are and then sorts them all out and figures out what's really going on here. So very difficult to lie to a Capricorn. Very difficult to even distract a Capricorn. The flip side of this, however, is just pessimism, by which I mean the analytical part of breaking everything down to figure out what's going on becomes breaking things down, period, and figure out what's going wrong. So if Capricorn is active in a chart in a negative way, it's not exactly analytical, it's more critical or pessimistic, where it is finding something wrong with everything. On the other hand, if Capricorn is very positive in a person's chart, it's not just finding something wrong with everything, it's figuring out how to fix everything. So Capricorn has those two extremes. When it's very positive, it figures out how to fix everything, which includes figuring out what's wrong with everything. But if Capricorn is negative, then it just figures out what's wrong with everything and can't really figure out what's right or how to make it right.
Now I'll explain the essential details about what sign dignity is and how you figure it out. Sign dignity is extremely useful for interpreting the houses, especially the first house, the rising sign. And you can also use it to interpret the dignity of any house that sign creates in any of the subdivisions as well, which is what I do in my report in the subdivisions module. So without going into too much explicit, mentally exhausting detail, here is basically how you figure out sign dignity. First of all, there's two things you need to know. You need to know the overall dignity of every planet, and you need to know how much aspect each planet is giving to each sign. Now, once you know those two things, you have 4 steps. You take the overall dignity of a planet and you multiply it by the percentage of aspect that the planet has on a sign. And that's how much dignity that planet is contributing to that sign. And by aspect, I also mean conjunction. However, when you do this, exclude the ascendant lord and exclude the sign's lord itself, because those will be handled separately. Then when you have that tally of the dignity contributed from the aspects of all the planets to a sign, you add to that the dignity of the sign's lord. And you average it with a weight that makes the sign's lord's dignity twice as important as the aspects from the other planets. Then you're halfway done. You got 2 more steps. Now we want to deal with the sign's lord and the first lord, whose influence is always positive. So just get the amount of aspect or conjunction from the sign's lord and the first lord to this particular sign that you're evaluating, and average them up with such a weighting that the sign's lord is twice as important as the first lord's. Now you're 3/4 of the way done. There's just one more step. You take the value that you got in step 3 and you average it with the value that you got before in step 2 in a weighting that makes step 2's 4 times more significant. Now the only remaining question is, how do you get this report so that you can get this information for yourself? That's fairly easy. You go to my website, vicdecara.com, and you click on the readings link, and then you select what module you want. If you want the basic chart interpreted, get the basic module. And if you want all of your subdivisions, including the Saptamsha interpreted, then you click to include also the subdivisions module. And then you click this to enter your birth data, and then you click this button to order it. Please don't forget to like and comment, and your likes and your comments help YouTube recognize that this video is something that should be shown to new people. So please help out with that. Thank you so much.